What's up, everyone? I wanted to show you something. On Thursday, I put up a video about some root decay. It was Ganoderma and Armillaria on a tree on a commercial site, and I just wanted to show everybody kind of how I put that or those proposals together for that site, so that I could kind of cover the company and give the customer all the information they needed, or as best I could in writing. So I'm going to show you that. All right, so it's done loading. So I'm going to go down to this tree that we were looking at with armillaria and root rot. Armillaria, root rot, and Ganoderma. So it's tree number 93 here. And I put this consulting line item here to try to cover ourselves. So if you can read it here. It says, when Ganoderma or Armillaria fungal bodies are present at the base of a tree, visible symptoms represent advanced internal decay that cannot be accurately validated from the ground. Conchs and mushrooms are fruiting stages of disease process that may have been active for years. A level 3 advanced risk assessment is the only standardized method to determine actual structural integrity, failure potential, and the safest path forward. Without it, any recommendation for removal or retention is a guess. So then I put here the risk assessment, right? And I just said this is what we're going to do. We're going to probably do some resistance drilling, and I put a price to do that there. There's the consulting line item. I just do that on there. And then I gave him an option to prune the tree. And I said, conditions concern, conchs at the base of the tree and armillaria mushrooms present. The pruning objectives are to preserve the tree ideally for 2 to 3 years, or maybe more. Reduce risk of tree failure and increase safety. Pruning description, reduce the entire crown by 10 to 15% using reduction cuts. Now, this isn't per the new PBQ because I'm kind of using something different. So I put an article here for them to look at from Frank Rinn that talks about how much reduction pruning is enough reduction pruning. And then an animated video that shows them how we would do that, or what we would do, and then some general pruning specifications there. And then I gave them an option to remove the tree as well. So that obviously says remove tree as close to grade as possible. Typically this is 3 to 6 inches. Bigger stumps with larger root fairs are likely to be as much as 12. Removal of debris is not included in this price. I have that included below, but I just gave them all those options, and I obviously I didn't select those options. So I'm going to make them do that. So I did select this because I'm recommending you should do a risk assessment, especially if you're going to keep the tree. They're probably not going to do that because it's, they don't want to, I'm sure they won't want to spend that. And they're going to probably ask me to, like, would you do this? Would you spend the money? And the truth is it would be hard for me to spend this money. Now, if I had a lot of extra money and I really cared about my trees, which this place is really on a pretty tight budget, I probably, maybe they would do this, but you have to ask these questions, right? And you got to be upfront with them. That's why I put the prices here. Like, do you really want to pay for this when you might find out that, it's a high risk tree, which it may be, right? That's maybe what we come up with. And then, and then they say, oh, we're just going to remove it. So that would have been a waste of that money, right? So I'm going to, obviously they're going to ask me those questions. I already told them that anyway, but I'm going to get asked again, I'm sure, because it'll go before their board. And they'll probably just end up deciding to remove the tree. Unfortunately, I'd love to see them keep the tree, but, I can't see them spending, this money here to prune and come back later, and then, maybe 3 years we get out of it. Maybe we could get more, but, then maybe they spend this again. I just don't see them doing that. So, that's their choice, not mine. My job, as I've said many times, is to give them all the information. And that's why I put these articles here too. Like, I love to put articles in about this stuff so they can learn about this type of pruning, see it for themselves. And then I mention it too in my email when I email them the proposals. So I say, check these line items for these links and read them so you understand why we're saying this. So I go over that stuff. And then I usually send links regarding, say, Armillaria or Ganoderma, which I already went over with them as well, so they do understand it. And I don't tell them like what I know about Ganoderma necessarily. I always direct them to a scientific publication. I really, really try not to just spit it out of my mouth. I try to show them what it says, right? So these were other trees as you go down here. So this is a fairly large proposal. Very time consuming to do these. This is something that I feel like we should be paid to do, is to develop a scope of work. And then all we got to do is go back and, you know, write up the proposal based off a scope. So like ideally, you know, a consulting arborist comes in, writes a scope, and then we just bid on it. That would be the easiest way to do it. But anyway, this does set us apart from other people though too. It's a lot of time into this. So here's the debris removal if they decide to prune the trees. I put in here like worst case scenario, if you remove the trees, here's what it probably costs for all 3 of them to get rid of that debris. It's expensive to get rid of a debris around here, about $61 a ton or so. And then the stump grinding option, if they did all 3, I said in there, you know, it's a third, a third, a third. They're all pretty big trees that they may have to remove. And then removing any sort of mulch, that is going to be also the mulch. Oh, this is actually wrong. So I'm glad I just looked at this. Because that is an optional line item. It's supposed to be 238 times 3 on that, I guess. So I messed that up. Good thing I looked through it. I'll fix it before they open it. You know, we have to get permits here, so that's if they get a permit. If the county makes them replace the trees, here's what's going to cost to remove those. You know, put those new trees in. We also give like watering instructions and care instructions in here on the installing new trees. And here also, you'll notice. We'll get into client responsibilities. You know, they're supposed to tell us what they need and want. I can't read their minds. It's kind of a funny little joke I make there, and some other things. And then lots of pictures to show everything. So this is how we roll. And it's very thorough. On the right here, we have a little sheet that kind of just lets them click and select things they want to. Anyway, let me know if you guys would have handled it differently. I just wanted to kind of show the verbiage that I use. See if anybody kind of does things different. Have a great Sunday evening, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow.